Now, today I'm going to bring up an example of trying to fix your computer and you've seen somewhere to delete upper and lower filters and may not know what that refers to. A little background, in the case of the word filter and upper and lower, we're referring to high level and very low level filters or high or low level drivers. The explanation I'm going to bring up now is very poorly written. It's someone else's. It kind of gets to the point. I'm only going to bring it up as kind of a placeholder for a much deeper discussion if you're going to learn computer programming. What is a kernel? The word kernel is used a lot for various reasons. It has a specific meaning, but almost no one uses it correctly, so I'm not going to for this video. Let's just say that at an extremely low level, right at where the hardware is in your computer, some piece of software has to actually manipulate its behavior. Some piece of software somewhere has to tell your video card to change its mode from high to low resolution, or to put a dot on the screen, or to move this cursor around. The software that's telling that cursor to move around is actually doing all the work. What I'm doing when I think I'm moving the cursor to the right is literally moving my mouse to the right. The only thing the operating system sees is that it's receiving an input that says mouse said right 400 pixels. That's it. It doesn't know anything other than that. And then it assumes I'm referring to this cursor. I could have two mice and two cursors. I mean, my operating system can be configured to do that. And it would then manipulate this mouse and go from here to here, 400 pixels to the right. It has no clue what it's pointing at. It doesn't know if it's pointing at this, this, or this. That has to be handled by yet another layer. These layers of software that get between what I'm doing and what the computer does, think of how much that's happening between programs in your computer, between pieces of hardware, etc. Your video card has many individual chips on it that are communicating back and forth, and they have to communicate quickly in some cases. The lower the level the driver or software, the faster it has to be able to run, and the more crash-proof it has to be written. Upper level or high level software is not necessarily written as well or written with that kind of quality control. Very low level Windows NT programming is done in the API, Application Program Interface, that's native to the hardware and operating system. One of them is for hardware. That means it has to be specific to your computer. They're usually called system drivers. The other one has to be to the operating system. There's even one that decides whether or not this version of Windows will run on a Macintosh. It has another API just for that. They run in the mode called kernel mode. That just means that now we refer to the word kernel as being a bunch of things. Other operating systems use the word kernel to mean something completely different. That's why I'm saying that. And this acts on the underlying hardware and also the underlying operating system in the case of the newer operating systems. Windows NT or new technology is the basis underneath, all the way from whatever current Windows you're dealing with, all the way back to Windows 2000, Windows XP, that sort of thing. And also Windows NT that existed. And they can be 16, 32, or 64-bit software. The higher level one is usually called Win16, Win, or Win32 Subsystem Application Programming Interface, or API. This is the high level stuff where we have a blue border and there's an X there that means close. That's the high level stuff. But between that and whatever we're dealing with, there are going to be drivers or filter. So when we see an entry somewhere that says we have to interact with or alter or change or find an upper or lower filter, what we're dealing with really is a piece of software somewhere that's called not a filter, but really a driver. It's also called middleware and a bunch of other confusing names. Upperfilters handle or filter device access, specifically hardware access requests between the software and the device driver. The device driver acts like the driver of a car. You can be in the back seat and tell the driver what to do, but the driver is the one who's driving the car. You're not pushing any buttons, pedals, or turning a wheel. Now, between the device driver and the devices, we could have something else going on here. There could be a high-level thing like a taxi dispatch company. I could be on the phone with a taxi company saying, I need your taxi driver or your Lyft driver to take me to a different location. Then they have to go through the trouble of being a middleman, talking to the driver on the phone, even though you're right there back seating them, and tell him he has authorization to change his pattern so they can charge you different money on your Lyft account or your Uber. That's a very good analogy for this. That's upper level. Lower level is like what happens in the car engine. When you push on the gas pedal in many cars, it's running a computer to control the gas. You're not pushing nothing. You're not pushing any valves. These low-level ones filter device access requests between the driver and the kernel, aka the hardware itself that's actually interacting with it, or the low-level software. And that's the equivalent to, well, the driver's telling it what to do, but there's something between it and the actual wheels. He's not sitting there cranking the wheels and turning the mechanics in it directly that way. At least not all of it. The place you might have seen on the internet you're supposed to go to deal with these damn things is called HKey Local Machine System, CurrentControlSet, all one word, Control, and then Class. Okay, so we're going to go into Registry Editor and go to that area in a minute, and we're going to look up Globally Unique Identifiers, or GUID. These are long cryptic key values that represent specific hardware devices. Now, first we're going to start off in the registry. We're going to go to the bottom of the list here and just click this. And again, it's Computer, HKey Local Machine, System, CurrentControlSet, Control Class, and then the GUID, and are displaying this long string of characters down here. And then on the right here, I'm going to arbitrarily look for upper and lower filters. Now, instead of sitting here with the mouse clicking it, I'm going to move it off to the side and use my keyboard because I can do it faster. And I'm just going to stare at the right side of the screen and look for upper and lower filter. Now, you notice the speed I'm doing this isn't really massively fast, but I can still do it. And I'm going to keep going until I see upper or lower filter. And it may take a while. And I might make a mistake or two. This is how fast you have to go. Don't go any faster. Now, I've arbitrarily opened up something with a long cryptic name to it, and I found lower filter. Okay, let's get an idea what it is. We double-click our lower filter. Do not erase anything. Repeat. When we open that up, we get these two entries. I'm going to copy both of them, and I'm going to go into my web browser, and I'm going to maximize it and hit, I'm going to go to Google or whatever. I'm going to do that. I'm going to see what that refers to. One of the files called RDY-Boost is a ReadyBoost system file. All that means is it's something involving hard drives, thumb drives, that sort of thing. The next one we're going to hit is this FVEVOL. Process associated with BitLocker encryption. Now, what that means is, if you're not aware of it, let's tear it apart. VOL, the last part, usually refers to volume. If you're not aware of it, that refers to something about a hard drive, normally. It could also refer to the sound system, of course, but in this case, if it's right next to something in our registry here with ReadyBoost, which is mostly for drives like hard drives and thumb drives, we're going to decide that that is the encryption for hard drive. Okay, so I'm going to look up what entry that is over here. I'm going to copy key name, and I'm going to go into our web browser here. So far we have some device that's got this ID code to it. I'm going to get rid of the rest of the line it brings up because it gives you the whole line. That device has a BitLocker setup for encryption and ReadyBoost. So it's probably a hard drive. So when I hit that enter point, it says class GUID includes storage volumes as defined by the system supplied logical volume, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so what's the translation? That long string of characters and these upper and lower characters are referring to either a thumb drive I had plugged in once or the hard drive I'm using right now. Now, if I remove the lower filter, in this case, the low-level filter, that means if this hard drive is using ReadyBoost or anything that's going through ReadyBoost, yes, there are other things, and or it has any encryption, if I delete that, it ain't going to work no more. Pretty basic. Now, what if this was broken? What if this had something in it like a driver for running my DVD drive or a DVD burner specifically or a CD burner because it's really new and fancy, or it's an older one that isn't supported anymore, so I had to get drivers to make it work correctly. If I have upper low end filters, I might be told to erase them from here because the drivers are bad. But that also means I have to make sure I remove those drivers and get them out of the system entirely, and I have to know where they are. Now I want to introduce you to this GUID for a hard drive. This is just a hard drive. That's how many entries are underneath that I have to weed through. Unless you have specific instructions, do not remove upper or lower filters for anything unless you absolutely have to. Willy-nilly going through all of these and removing upper and lower filters is probably just going to break a bunch of hardware. Now, let me repeat myself. All I did was look for the first entry, see how far I had to go up, that had a listing that included upper and lower filters. In this case, it only had lower filter. This means it's a low-level, bare metal, really, really important piece of code in most cases. If it's a DVD burner, it might be something to prevent me from burning DVD copies and illegally making pirated video games or who knows what. I might need to remove them because maybe it broke. Maybe a company forced an update to break it because they bought the company out and it was their competitor and they're screwing over all their customers. Who knows? The point is, unless you know where that lower filter is referring to or the upper filter, and unless you know where to get something to fix it when you do go ahead and erase it and maybe F it up, don't do any kind of erasure. Don't erase things. Now we're going to go from the other end of it. I'm going to look up a random item in here. Let's randomly pick this one. This is in Device Manager. We double click that, go to Details, go down to the GUID, right click, copy, cancel. Now I'm going to go up here all the way to the top and see if I can find it here. I should be able to. Now I'm going to go ahead and edit, find. Now I'm going to put that code in, but I'm going to remove the first and last bracket. Don't ask why. Hitting find next, and we find this. And if I open that up, we only have two things. We got one from we got one here, and the other one saying properties is not allowed for some reason. It says current save technology. Okay. And all sorts of stuff here. Now I'm going to go into that GUID and see if it has an upper or lower filter, and it doesn't. It has an icon path to a System32 file somewhere, and let's see what else it has. It's just saying it's an installer. Now I know for a fact that thing I would think that would have an upper or lower filter associated because the current safe driver is for a virtual controller. There's no hardware with it. That's the kind of thing you'd think. Well, no. The current safe controller here is an upper and a lower filter. It's a driver. All it does is it makes it to where I can make something act like it's a different piece of equipment. That's what it's for. So that's an example of, you might want to call that a dead end or something, but that tells us we get a really simple entry here with no upper or lower filter, because this is an example of one. And what we have here is some basic information on removing the software, and the software turns on when it's needed. So, to review, what are kernel drivers? These are pieces of software written at low level. What is the kernel? The low-level subsystem that runs your computer. Macintoshes have a similar thing, so does Linux. And the word kernel is misused a lot, especially on Windows, because kernel means something different under completely different operating systems. It's the very low-level control over your system that's very dominant. Mostly, it can be not accessed at all by a human. Sometimes it can be accessed pretty much only from your command prompt, or you have to write a special piece of software. The upper level, or high level, is the Windows 32 subsystem API, or whatever it is you can see that interacts with your computer, the hardware, or the operating system. Filters, or we're going to call them drivers, get in between the hardware and the operating system, or the hardware and you, or you and the operating system, and in some cases between the drivers that also do the same thing, in a technically many stacked layered list of interactions. Lower level filters are for hardware, very low level access, and the higher level one, or upper filters, are mostly the ones that alter the way things work with you. Like making my mouse cursor change to something else might be considered an upper filter, although I doubt it. I showed you an example of a lower filter being a driver that fakes having a SCSI system or something. And the entries for these that you will usually be instructed to go look in is the registry HKey local machine system, CurrentControlSet, control class, and then a GUID, a globally unique identifier, a long cryptic key value you can easily